The story Picking Worms is centered around a young female protagonist who is guided by her mother through a physically and emotionally demanding job on the hog farm picking worms. The story occurs with a poor indigenous family who makes their money off an overlooked task. This job for the protagonist raises aspects of poverty while also embarrassment for herself, her family, and the job itself by the way society views them and their position regarding wealth. The story takes the readers through many symbols, themes, literary devices, and connections to the Fry and Campbell theories.
First, let's talk about the three symbols in the story. The worms are the main symbol of the story. They symbolize the grittiness of the labor with the unglamorous look and feel of the creatures beneath the soil. Worms are creatures that are often ignored and undervalued, just like the people who do this kind of work. They live beneath the earth, often unseen, which mirrors with the invisibility of the protagonist's labor and the lack of respect her and her family receive from society. The next symbol, we have the protagonist's body, especially her hands and arms, can be a symbol of labor and self-worth. The uncomfortableness and disgust of pulling up the worms highlights the strain of poverty and the impact of physically hard work on self-worth. The discomfort of the task is a reminder of how hard manual labor can be on the body, especially when it's undervalued and underpaid. Finally, the third symbol is hands. The act of using hands to pick the worms can be viewed as a symbol of both the protagonist's labor and her connection to the world around her. The engagement with the worms creates a connection between the person and the earth, but can also bring up feelings of shame and disappointment as the protagonist reflects on the humiliation of the task. There were three themes in the story that really stood out to me throughout the story, the first one being poverty and labor. The protagonist's forced labor picking worms alongside with her mother illustrates the physical toll of poverty. This task symbolizes the physical toll of poverty and the aspects of low-wage labor. This menial job done for survival represents the difficult and often invisible work that low-income families must do to get by. It's a stark reflection of how the labor of the poor is often overlooked and undervalued. The second theme being shame and identity. The story shows how the protagonist feels shame for herself and how society views her. Picking worms for a living is a very unnoticed task that leads her to feel embarrassed by it. Feeling shame intertwines with the drive of the protagonist to find a world where her labor is valued and respected. Lastly, family and responsibilities. The story also reflects the theme of responsibility, specifically regarding family, as the protagonist does hard work that is essential for survival. Her role of working an intense job with her family shows love, commitment, and desire to help out her family. Now let's explore how we can look at a story through three different literary lenses. The psychological lens focuses on the protagonist's inner conflicts and the depth of her emotions. Her feelings of shame and embarrassment come from the impact of poverty. The story highlights how the environment around her, specifically the labor she is involved with, alters her self-image, worth, and emotional growth. Using a feminist lens, we can see the gendered expectations around the protagonist's labor. Women in the story, especially in low-income families, are expected to do physically demanding, often unrecognized work. This mirrors the gendered roles in society where women's labor is often undervalued. Also, the story allows the readers to hear the voice and perspective of a young girl struggling with social expectations and family duties. The matrix lens is shown in the story through class struggles and alienation, with the protagonist being trapped in her situation and work. From a matrix perspective, the work of picking worms is unequal treatment, especially for people in low-income situations. Working class people are often given low pay, undervalued jobs even if they don't have a choice, which reflects exploitation. Finally, let's look at how the story connects to Fry and Campbell's theories of the hero's journey. According to Fry, literature follows archetypal patterns that echo universal human experiences. The protagonists experience archetypal patterns from innocence to experience because of her job. In the beginning, she is unaware of the harsh world, but as she proceeds through learning about her new job of picking worms, the embarrassment and frustration become an experience. The experience she is faced with can be seen as a rite of passage, or quest, as Fry would say, because it represents her search for further understanding of herself and her life. Campbell's hero's journey is a way to look at stories where the main character goes through a series of challenges that deeply change them. Although her labor is physical, she isn't fighting a very physical challenge, it's more an internal one. Her feelings of shame due to hard labor and figuring out who she is as an immigrant worker is like a call to adventure. The task of picking up worms is her ordeal, as it's a task she has to deal with. The end of the story shows her acceptance and return of who she is and her place in the world.
The story Picking Worms is about labor, identity, and acceptance. Through the use of literary lenses, symbols, and themes, the readers gain a deeper understanding of the protagonist's emotional journey. The story challenged me and other readers to look at the way society treats people who do the hardest jobs and yet remain invisible. In the end, it's not about the worms or the dirty labor, it's about dignity, respect, and the desire for recognition in a world that overlooks some of the most essential tasks. Thank you.